When in England, at a fairly large conference, Colin Powell was asked by the Archbishop of Canterbury if our plans for Iraq were just an example of empire building by George Bush. He answered by saying, "Over the years the United States has sent many of its fine young men and women into great peril to fight for freedom beyond our borders. The only amount of land we have ever asked for in return is enough to bury those that did not return." You could have heard a pin drop. There was a conference in France where a number of international engineers were taking part, including French and American. During a break, one of the French engineers came back into the room saying, "Have you heard the latest dumb stunt Bush has done? He has sent an aircraft carrier to Indonesia to help the tsunami victims. What does he intend to do, bomb them?" A Boeing engineer stood up and replied, quietly, "Our carriers have 3 hospitals on board that can treat several hundred people. They are nuclear-powered and can supply energy in an emergency to shore facilities. They have 3 cafeterias with the capacity to feed 3,000 people 3 meals a day. They can produce several thousand gallons of fresh water from seawater each day, and they carry 6 helicopters for use in transporting victims and injured to and from their flight. We have 11 such ships. How many does France have?" You could have heard a pin drop. A U.S. Navy admiral was attending a naval conference that included admirals from the U.S., English, Canadian, Australian, and French navies. At a cocktail reception, he found himself standing with a large group of officers that included personnel from most of those countries. Everyone was chatting away in English as they sipped their drinks. But a French admiral suddenly complained that whereas Europeans learn many languages, Americans learn only English. He then asked, "Why is it that we always have to speak English in these conferences rather than speaking French?" Without hesitating, the American admiral replied, "Maybe it's because the Brits, Canadians, Aussies, and Americans arranged it so you wouldn't have to speak German." You could have heard a pin drop. And this fits right in. Robert Whiting, an elderly gentleman, 83 years old, arrived in Paris by plane. At French customs, he took a few minutes to locate his passport and his carry-on. "You have been to France before, monsieur?" the customs officer asked sarcastically. Mr. Whiting admitted that he had been to France previously. "Then you should know enough to have your passport ready." The American said, "The last time I was here, I didn't have to show it." "Americans always have to show your passports on arrival in France." The American senior gave the Frenchman a long, hard look, and he quietly explained, "Well, when I came ashore at Omaha Beach on D-Day in 1944 to help liberate this country, I couldn't find a single Frenchman to show a passport to." You could have heard a pin drop.